Good evening, everybody. How's it going? It's me, Comic Crack. We're back, and this afternoon we had our chat and our afternoon hangout over on La Rasa's channel. So if you're interested, please go and give that a watch. A couple of 2.5 hours, I think, today. A nice long chat. Kind of when we come back into summer, it starts getting. It's not as easy as in the winter to kind of keep these afternoon chats, these Sunday kind of hangouts regular. Things are going on in life, and just you don't always have a time to read a lot. So we missed last weekend, but we were back this weekend. So go and check out La Rasa's channel. Make sure that you subscribe to her as well, and keep hanging out with us and reading comics. Dan Elson, good evening. How are you, man? Always good to see you. So to start off today, let's go right into library books. So last weekend I was talking about a Jack London short story that was put into a comic. Do I have that close? I don't have it close. Don't know where I put it actually. And there was a lot of recommendations for The Iron Heel. So we went to a couple of our libraries. One of them to pick up some books from my daughter. Ended up browsing the graphic novel section and picking out a couple of things that we'll talk about tonight as well. And then did a search and found that this was at another kind of local library, kind of on the other side of where we live. So down kind of, I guess that's west of us. Yes, if my directions are correct. So I went in and grabbed this, and I've read the first couple of chapters, and so far I'm really digging it. The format of it is pretty interesting. We're getting kind of like a history of these characters. This Ernst Everhard is kind of our Everhard. Is that his last name? We're getting kind of a history of his life and Ernest, and in kind of the telling of the story that his wife is doing, reliving when she first met him. We're also getting some notes at the bottom of the pages going back to historical fact. So so far it's been a good blend of kind of fiction, and then there's some factual stuff in here too. Like they do reference some actual documents, even though from what my limited knowledge is on some of this stuff, some of the names have been changed, but some of the books themselves and ideas are taken from kind of our world. So it's this really interesting mix of fiction, sci-fi, because I get the sense this takes place way in the future. I'm sure it's said, and I'm just drawing a blank on how far into the future, looking back at kind of our time period and before us, or at least the time period that this book was written in. Super interesting stuff. And one of the things that it gets me thinking about, well, it gets me thinking about a couple of things. This Ernest is a real big speaker for kind of the proletariat, for like the worker, for the working class. And he has such a way with people that he starts to find himself sort of climbing that social ladder. So breaking out a little bit of his kind of working class background and entering, or at least getting a seat at the table for these people that are in kind of higher positions than him, and the people that kind of he represents to some degree and is a part of. And one of the themes they end up talking about is this kind of disconnection between the classes. He keeps getting accused of trying to sow class violence, and he routinely says, just because I'm pointing out the differences in the classes and the struggles that we're having, the class struggles that we're having, doesn't mean that I'm advocating any sort of class violence. I'm not advocating anything like that. So those ideas are super interesting. I'm still so early in. It's hard to kind of see where it's going to go. I feel like he's obviously the central character in the book. We'll see where it ends up weaving. I don't particularly know anything about Jack London's politics. So I don't know where he's going to take the story, what kind of the long-term message is. The one thing that's been pretty striking also is these notes at the bottom of the pages. There's almost like a tonal shift in them so far, from this factual to almost this, can you believe what they were doing back then. You know, this sort of like looking down your nose at the past, I think, which all of us tend to do. The further you get away from a time period, the more a lot of things kind of get put into perspective. As far as, I can't even believe that that was something that they would ever even talk about. What do you mean they couldn't even use the same water fountains? Like, that's absurd. It just, some of those things, the further and further away you get, it just seems more absurd and alien. Another thing that he ends up talking, well, that part, just to touch on that, these kind of upper class people being out of touch. I mean, I experienced some of that in my job at the union. This isn't a diss on anybody specific. This is just factual. There was people within the union, the upper echelons of the union, that were in the positions of being on the executive board and kind of making decisions on behalf of union members that didn't have a working class background. Do I think that that's 100% needed? Honestly, these days, I kind of do. I kind of feel like if you're going to be in those positions, especially within a union, you should have that working class background. You should know what it feels like to live paycheck to paycheck. You should know what it feels like to have a job where you're being told you can't have bathroom breaks, where there's some sort of really strict regulation on your workplace to some degree, you know, and obviously you don't have to check all these boxes, but I do feel like you need to come from that kind of world where you understand what living like that is like. Because not only did we have people, or do we still do have people on the executive board who don't have that background. They also don't have experience in other jobs outside of kind of the arts or the film industry specifically. So again, there's not that perspective on what it's like for someone to be working in a warehouse, I don't know, working in a Walmart stocking shelves, or whatever it is, a steel factory. And that's a really tough place to be. I don't feel like you can represent people in the working class if you don't understand where they're coming from. This is not about agreeing with things that they believe or having the same belief systems. It's about understanding the world so you can better make arguments when you're at that table advocating for the working class people. And of course, that also doesn't mean that now that you have that understanding that you go with everything and push for every single thing. There's that separate kind of game. One of the things that he talks about in here, though, is he feels that when you're in that system, when you've moved up from kind of the working class into this kind of, I guess, next level of society, you're not helping the working class any longer. You're now in a position where you're now playing you're playing a different game with a different set of rules, and you start being more of a hindrance to the working class than actually helpful. This change and this momentum and this shift should be coming directly from the working class themselves. So almost this idea of, he's not talking about unions in here. This is just my thoughts on it, that it feels like it almost ends up talking about that as well. This idea of having somebody representing you in these bigger conversations, which that's a whole other separate discussion, I think, that have pros and cons, I suppose. But one of the things it also gets me thinking about is it's almost this sad factor of when this book was written, we get into this space again, thinking of like time. We get into this space of, it feels like some of these struggles are just never ending. And what the end goal of this stuff is, what the end goal is for the working class in a capitalist society. What are the end goals? What are the things that we're looking to accomplish as working class people being forced into these positions in a capitalist kind of world where the final factor is how much money somebody is making that's well above you, where you're not seeing any of those benefits whatsoever, and the length of time that it takes to get this foothold. And then it always ends up bringing me back to these arguments that we in the working class end up having with each other, that when you step outside of it, again, my perspective that I've said here many, many times, I think most of those arguments are fucking asinine and a waste of time. And they're arguments that take our eye off the prize, which is exactly what they want. People don't want a working class uprising. They don't want a working class that is kind of banded together. If that does happen, the reality becomes crystal clear immediately. You just have to look at places like in France when they protest and garbage stops getting picked up and just day-to-day things just come to a screeching halt, how that completely shuts down a city, right? So my thread with that was, how do we kind of continue keeping engaged, keeping our eyes on the prize of elevating everybody's life in kind of these mid to lower economic classes? How do we keep our eye on the ball? One of the things that the show, the Star Wars Andor, the show Andor really did well, I thought. They addressed that pretty amazingly. There was a couple of characters, one of the main characters specifically, who had a couple of really amazing speeches exactly about that, knowing his place within the grand scheme of, here is my role within this struggle. This struggle has these outcomes that I'll never end up seeing. I will never be a part of it, but I know that I have to maintain my position during my life within this role for it to even stand a chance to make it to that next phase, which then leads right into, how do we get people engaged? There's so many people that are disengaged. After the conversation last weekend, I had an email from somebody who I'll keep nameless. And basically we had just one back and forth. There was an email sent and I sent a response. And one of the things that I struggle with often is talking about these things. I know that people aren't engaged with politics. I understand it and I respect it, but deep down it bothers me. And I really feel like we need to have some way to get people engaged on a bigger scale outside of themselves and outside of their world and outside of their hobbies. A lot of this stuff for the longest time hasn't crept in really into the videos that I've done when we've talked comics and things. I don't see that as something that I can do anymore, obviously, as you're seeing right now. I do feel like that's our biggest struggle. And again, to bring it back down to my personal experience within a smaller organization like a union, just getting people engaged in the day-to-day activity and mundanity, I guess, of the running of a union and what it takes being a member of a union, going to meetings, being engaged, reading the emails, participating in voting, running for positions if that's what you want to do, all of those things. And it just comes from a place of seeing how often people get beat down when they try to affect change, or, as is with our kind of theme, the length of time that it takes to actually make change. I would often field a lot of calls of, this is what the issue is, here's what the solution is, let's do it. And then a week later, so has that been done yet? What are you talking about? There's this inability to kind of accept the fact that any change, big or small, is going to take some time. It's not a light switch. It takes engagement. It takes conversations. It takes all of these steps to bring us to a point where we actually see some of the benefits, reap some of the benefits. And that was one of the toughest things about leaving that job, was putting in all of that work, starting to see a lot of those benefits near the end of my time there, and then being gone. And now that I'm kind of getting back into working in film and working on set and things, or offset, talking to people that I used to talk to on a regular basis, telling me that they've personally experienced a shift backwards, a slide back down the hill, all this movement that was made forward, it just kind of comes crumbling down again once you start losing those systems and those people in specific places, right? So, and I think that's the biggest thing that I struggle with all of this, which is why I talk to my kids about politics, which is why I engage my kids the way that I do. Again, they're not particularly interested in it either. They listen because they love me and we've got a mutual respect thing, and I appreciate that. they do have interest sometimes, but I can also see when their eyes are glazing over. But I do feel like it's important to kind of keep having those conversations, as it is here, as I see the numbers of people coming in and leaving the room rising and dropping, rising and dropping. It's a constant kind of push to try to get people to be engaged, understanding what's going on in the world, participating in the little ways that you can, not support, whether that's just personally not supporting certain organizations to the best of your ability, trying to support local businesses, even if it's things like that. It becomes just a struggle. I really feel like people who are disengaged aren't the problem. That's not the word for it, but it does create a gap where you then don't see in your day-to-day life some of these things that you're missing coming into play. We referenced last weekend, I think, what's going on in the States at the college campuses and things. Some of the gaps that you end up seeing, where now they start imposing things like censorship, where they start imposing things like the inability just to speak freely, or even when we were talking about TikTok on this channel, we were talking about, that if government and people in power want to crush one of the ways that we communicate with each other, we need to take a good look at that, and we need to be focused on that, and we need to ensure that those avenues stay open, and we need to ensure we don't fall into some of the propaganda traps that are laid for us when we talk about those things with each other. And I think if you're disengaged to that degree that you can't see those things occurring, you end up falling into those traps and using the words that that I hate, that using these catchphrases, blaming that orange guy in the States for everything like he's the boogeyman, blaming the woke like they're the cause of all of our woes, blaming this, blaming that, whatever blanket umbrella word that you want to use for different groups of people, you end up participating in that. The Due Dissidents guys that I talk about here often, they had a really great stream today. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing. Today was a day I didn't have much time, so I sort of waited till most of it went live and then fast forwarded to chunks. And one of the guys, Russell Dobular, seeing his transition, they were talking about Brianna Joy Gray, who's on The Hill. She has a show called Rising with Robbie Suave. Brianna Joy Gray, I think, is an incredible speaker. She's an incredibly engaging person to listen to. I find that for the most part, she treats topics very, very fairly. She also doesn't hide her disdain for certain other topics too. Seeing Russell's kind of progression over this past kind of 6-8 months in his feelings towards her, where he pretty much was writing her off, to being at a point now where he had this interaction with her, going to this big speaker symposium that was supposed to be about, was it supposed to be about freedom of expression? Possibly. I don't remember what the whole intent of this thing was, but seeing her on a panel arguing with a room filled with people and on a stage filled with people that didn't agree with her when they were talking about what's going on with the Palestinians, and him feeling like he was the only other person in the room there that agreed with her, and feeling that sense of, holy shit, all of these things that I thought were important when it came to my personal beefs with Brianna Joy Gray in that moment were meaningless, because I could see that we were more alike than different, and especially met with that disdain from an enormous group of people who, even when Brianna Joy Gray talked about dead children, apparently there was a laugh in the audience, and she turned and looked at the person that was laughing, and they didn't break eye contact with her and just kept smiling. And she was just kind of horrified at this idea that how could anybody be that far away from caring about other human beings where they're laughing about children being killed in another country? How is this possible that we're at this point? He then realized that those other things, yes, one-on-one, sure, they might be important, but in moments like that, it really solidifies, no, we're definitely on the same side of this. And I think, again, that's something that I stress every single week, that we need to understand that for the most part, I'm hopeful, especially people watching this channel and engaging with me week after week, we're more on the same page than we're not. Who gives a shit if there's a little vein here where, well, you talk shit about superhero books, so therefore we can't speak anymore. You know who I'm talking about. You know I'm talking about you. That kind of stuff is irrelevant. It's irrelevant when it comes to the bigger scope of things, when we have so much more in common that we need to be commonly pushing forward on. Who gives a shit about some of these other squabbles that are being put upon us by people who don't have our best interests in mind, who don't want to see us succeed in any way? So it's my usual warning of, anytime you see somebody trying to pit one group of working class or middle class people against another one, saying anybody who's telling you that your neighbor is your true enemy, you need to be extremely suspicious of that person, and you need to look at them and question them about what their angle is and what they get out of that. What do you get out of me fighting with my neighbor? Don't we all hate superhero books? 420, welcome. Thank you for that. No, we don't all hate them. We absolutely don't hate them. But it's a nice comment. I appreciate it. But again, that type of thing, I think, is oh, I'm getting a warning about my Wi-Fi. If I'm still here, give me 1 second. No, it looks good on this end. Okay, well, I'll keep trucking along. If you can hear me, you can hear me. If not, oh well. Wouldn't be the first time I've sat in a room talking to myself. So just be wary of those traps. Try to get involved somehow. Try to pay attention at least a little bit about what's going on. Us here in Canada, 420 can understand this, I'm sure. We get inundated with stuff from the United States. Try your best. I am really bad with this. Try your best to also be just as engaged with what's going on here in Canada. And then further to that, try your very best to be engaged with what's going on within your city, state, province, wherever you're from, your township, your suburb. Try to pay attention to some of that stuff as well. And again, this is cards on the table. I'm not the best at those things. I need work on those things, and it's something I'm trying to get to. But try to be engaged. Try to see the games that people are playing. Try not to fall in the traps. Please just stop using some of these umbrella terms for people, lumping people into one group. It's boring. It doesn't get anywhere. It's just this childish infighting. Let's move past that kind of dialogue and get into actual dialogue where we look to make some positive changes in this short blip of a speck of time that we're here on this planet. Dan Elson, very insightful. I appreciate your thoughts and outlook on this matter. My wife had a difficult time when she worked at the union and had some complaints for sure about how it went down. I gotta say, honestly, like I won't get into it too deeply, but I had a hell of a time working at the union. I was the one thing that kind of stunned me the most about working at the union was that there wasn't more people working at that union who not thought like I did, but were at least a little more towards that end of the spectrum of arguments and wanted to actually represent the workers themselves. There was numerous times where people wouldn't talk to specific members. And one time that's really ringing in my head, that's rung in my head ever since it happened, was somebody not wanting to talk to one of our members who had questions because of their political views. And when I said I would talk to them, I was met with, why would you talk to them? Why would you waste your time talking to them? Do you know what they think about X, Y, and Z? To which, of course, my response was, who fucking cares? This is a member that we work for here at this union. So there was things that were going on there that really were stunning to me and really kind of disheartening to some degree. The lack of kind of, and again, I honestly put it to, there was a number of people higher up in that organization, not necessarily working within the office, but higher up in that organization that just did not have that perspective of the working class. I remember sitting in a meeting and talking about some of our members who were living paycheck to paycheck and how we needed to be putting penalties on our paychecks, on the employers for late payment, and actually putting it into our collective agreement. There was one individual who was stunned and literally said, "What do you mean we have members that are living paycheck? That's not true." It's absolutely true. Even in this industry, we have members that are living paycheck. And this individual was stunned by that idea and that concept, that there would be people that have to live paycheck to paycheck to kind of make ends meet. It just never ceased to amaze me and disappoint me and depress me to some degree, but also make those changes that happen within our collective agreement. We did end up putting penalties into our collective agreement, and that's 100% thanks to me. I'm going to take full fucking credit for that. And we ended up making some changes, right? But I was just always amazed that there weren't more people that had that kind of labor background and had that kind of fight in them. My wife actually got a check in the mail from a class action lawsuit from the union withholding wages 4 years after she quit the union job. Fucking hell, Dan. That is something. Yeah. It's disappointing. And again, it's also why I end up talking to my kids the way that I do. And I try to get my kids involved in just kind of paying attention to the world around them. 420 knows kind of the certain areas of town. I've routinely taken them through the North End. We've gone to restaurants around Sargent and Ellis in that kind of area, in kind of the sections that are a little more kind of like, not like there's no, I don't personally feel like there's a specific area of town that's more dangerous than anywhere else. Winnipeg is maybe not the safest of cities when you look at the grand scheme of things. There's some areas where that's a little more focused. Making sure that my kids end up seeing those things, making sure that we end up experiencing and having conversations about how people get to certain points in their life and what our city does and what politics have to do with that, and et cetera, et cetera. Trying to get them a good base of understanding and looking outside of our walls on our house, I guess. I'm going to stop there because I feel like I'm starting to just babble now, but basically the gist of it is, thank you very much for everybody who suggested this. I am enjoying it. I'm a little trepidatious to see where this goes, but I'm with it. I'm with it so far. It also points out to me my lack of knowledge. There's a lot of talk of Marxism and things. I don't come from that world. I don't know those texts. I don't know those kind of overarching themes. It's just my ignorance. So there's going to be some of those conversations that are a little lost on me. But a lot of what this main character is saying so far are things I've said myself and things I think myself. And as usual with some of this stuff, it's nice to have someone putting into words what's in your mind that you can't articulate nearly as well as somebody like this can. Lived in the North End and attended schools near Ellis and Sargent, near parents' work growing up. Things have changed. Yeah, it's changed. One of our offices was across from Central Park. And I mean, that's a really good, I remember being a teenager, Central Park was where we used to go to score. It still has that element there, but seeing things like a splash park and kids playing soccer on the field there, it's dramatically different than what it used to be. And right now we live near Polo Park there, 420. We live on Valor Road, which is kind of, we're out of that kind of zone, but not the furthest away. We've had break-ins and stuff out as far as here to car and the house numerous times. So it's still a little, we still feel some of that, even though we're not right down in that end there. So what else did I get from the library? We'll just kind of dig in. We'll start that way. Actually, we'll start with the book I didn't talk about in the chat with Rasa. Very excited to find this. I've seen this before. Oh no, it's not Fantagraphics. Sorry, New York Review of Comics. The Green Hand and Other Stories by a French artist, Nicole Clavelou, with an introduction by Daniel Clowes. So I know I've seen her art before, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. And when I read the introduction by Clowes, he mentions having various versions of her work in French and not being able to read them. And when he finally discovered that she was printed in Heavy Metal magazine, he soaked those up, which got me to go to some of my heavy metals. And that's exactly where I've seen her work before, because they're early issues of Heavy Metal. This is gorgeous work. I'm only halfway through the book, but I wanted to kind of talk about it and show it here, because I don't think the stories themselves are okay so far, but I think it's the art that's really the art and the coloring that is really just outstanding in this, and hopefully you're seeing that okay. She apparently didn't do a ton of comics. This book is broken up into kind of two halves. The first half is color work, and the second half is black and white. And I think, no, the color work has a couple of different stories. I thought it was just this first story. There's one long story, and then there's one shorter one that's kind of done in portraits, and then we get into the black and white work. So the kind of the subtlety, strangely enough, looking at this, the kind of subtlety within how the coloring is used, especially when it comes to lighting the images in the panels. I was amazed at the transition of colors from page to page, even on the same two pages, seeing yellows, reds, and blues there in great effect, and then mixed. Stuff like this, I think, is gorgeous. Just that lighting on the side of those plants there is beautiful, beautiful stuff. The gist of it is we have this woman who lives with this bird, is trying to get into having some plants in the house that she communicates with, or that communicate with her. She doesn't have a green hand, as they call it here, similar to a green thumb. And she kind of goes off to explore and sort of enters this, the usual, this kind of psychedelic world where she shifts. She can phase through walls. She meets all sorts of other characters, almost like a Jodorowsky type of fever dream type of moving through the world. But most of it centered on talking to nature and incorporating herself with nature, seeing some humans as well too. This particular couple who are madly in love, so madly in love that they think their love is going to fade if they stop embracing and staring intently at each other, even to sleep. So they're just kind of stuck in this mode of constantly staring at each other. Daryl D, welcome. Jonah Jello, welcome. Miski 361, welcome. So beautiful, beautiful stuff. It is gorgeous. I'll show you. So I think it's, yeah, some of this stuff. Clowes had said that he found the coloring in the Heavy Metal magazines paled in comparison to this here. Yes, they're a little bit different. I think they're pretty damn close. This one I think was a little darker, so it almost created this little more vibrancy to the coloring, whereas I can see in Heavy Metal it's a little bit different. He really had an issue with the lettering in the Heavy Metal magazine. I would agree with him on that. I love the lettering in this one, but again, he's a big, if anybody knows lettering and has the resume to critique lettering, it's Daniel fucking Clowes, master letterer himself. So I would just take him at his word on that one for sure. So I get used to this kind of style, and then the story ends, and we get into these one-page portraits of these people where the coloring is kind of, their images are kind of chiseled out on the page with these bold kind of, it almost looks like felt marker, really, really bold line work to kind of make up the contours and the shading on the face and the coloring in the faces, with a little story encapsulating each of these characters here. This is amazing stuff. And it, like I said, it's really great. These collections are fantastic for that exact reason. Seeing different eras of an artist's work in one book, being able to compare them, excuse me, from page to page throughout a book is phenomenal. So that's, and this is as far as I've read. So I'll just show you a little bit of the black and white stuff. But I haven't gotten into this yet. So I don't have much to say about it because I haven't even really looked through too much of this black and white stuff with any great detail, but it still looks gorgeous, more in that style of what the first story was, but just stripped down. It is the Doom T. Thank you very much, Daryl. Yeah, it's, what an artist, and what a time to be alive. It's crazy the amount of stuff that's out there now at our fingertips for these artists that maybe time has mostly forgotten, save a handful of people who are really into this stuff. And thank God that they are, that there's people around to kind of present this to us. So I'll get to the comments there in 1 second. So this is New York Review of Comics. There's a picture of her on the back there. And again, it's called The Green Hand. And there's how you spell her last name there. For those of you wanting to check it out. So I pulled out a couple of the heavy metals. Let's not put it there. There's water there. Let's try to stand this up over here. I only pulled out 2 issues. So this is November 1977. And in here we have one of this is the second last part of the story. Let's pull that out of there. So you can see here presented in kind of this magazine format. To my eyes, still looks beautiful. I'll focus in on the lettering in a second here. But looks really great. And again, like I said, I knew that I recognized it from somewhere, but you end up seeing so much work over the years that it's hard to always remember where you've run into artists. At least for me, it is. So I'm not sure if that's focusing or not, but there you go. There's kind of a closer look at things there. So I pulled out November and December to see, but I imagine if you go backwards, December is the final part of the story, which so going backwards from there to the early issues. So if you have these early 1977 issues of Heavy Metal and you want to see some of her art up close and personal for yourself, grab those magazines out of your stockpile and have a flip through. Beautiful work, beautiful. It's a book that I might have to keep an eye out for to order for myself. I'd love to have that in the library, a collection of her stuff. And then here's the cover of the December 1977. Yes, December 1977 issue of Heavy Metal. So check out those and check out that era to see more of her stuff. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I got a big Lone Star order yesterday, which included some crack recommendations. Oh, don't start that. There you go. Which included some crack recommendations, including Charlie's War Volume 1 and a reprint of Rachel Rising #1. Amazing. I'll be curious to see what you think of Charlie's War #1 or Volume 1 there, Dan. I love that book. I think it's amazing. And I think that was thanks to guys like Paulo Costa, who were recommending that to me. One of my besties lives on Valor. Amazing. I guess there must be a trap house in that neighborhood these days, hence the thieving zombies. Yeah, many such cases. Well, I think we just get I mean, maybe I won't say anything out loud. I've got some ideas there, but yes. Hi, Terrence. I have that book. Agreed. The art and coloring are great. Hey, what's your shirt? My shirt, you've probably seen it now. It's Doom. MF Doom. All caps. Hellos and fantastic art. Charlie's War is awesome. It sure as hell is. Started reading it today. It's fantastic so far. I love everything I've read from Britain's Battle. Amazing. I haven't read much from the Battle magazine. I guess it was like, yeah, I haven't read much from it, so I'm curious to read some more, but that one is really, really great. What else was library? Oh, this one I haven't started reading yet, but I got Snowpiercer book 1. Matt's and Rochette are writing this. Matt's most notably for me from the Killer series that I absolutely love. I guess his stuff is kind of hot because this one got adapted, this graphic novel saga that inspired the TV series. I love him as a writer. They had the first volume in at the library, so I thought I'd give it a try. But like I said, I haven't dipped into this one yet, so no idea yet. I'm very curious about it, though. I do like his writing. I'm also curious I still haven't seen the Killer movie, and if once I read this, I wouldn't mind seeing the show too, just to see what they do with his stuff. The other library find was I finally read Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Night Fever. And I've heard from a number of people that this is a book that's kind of back to the classic Brubaker and Phillips comics. And I would agree with that. I kind of got disillusioned a little bit with, I mean, that's maybe a harsh word, but the Reckless series didn't do anything for me. Let's put it that way. I read the first, did I read the first 2 books or 3 books? I don't even remember. They're not in the collection anymore. They're gone. I took a bit of a break, and I think that was one of the things that I think was needed. They're creators that have put out so much work together, so many amazing books, that I think I was just at a point where I needed a break from them. I needed to step away. Is this their best book? No, it's pretty fucking good, though. I was talking about it with Rasa this afternoon as well, and the basic premise of the book is we have this guy who is kind of a failed writer, not a failed writer, never really pursued it to a great degree. He now works for a publishing company, and his job is to get these books on foreign markets. So he spends his time traveling around to kind of promote and sell books to other markets. Is he somewhere in Europe in this one? I don't remember actually where he is here. He ends up getting caught up in this kind of underworld type of sex club where he follows a couple of people. He's on the plane, and he's reading a manuscript of a book that's coming out. There's a dream in there in this book. The main character in the book he's reading has this continual reoccurring dream of him reverting back to kind of a caveman and being kind of like this savage who is just kind of killing people and eating animals and building fires and just this really primal kind of instinctual stuff. It resonates with him because for a long period of time, he was having that exact same reoccurring dream. He automatically jumped to, well, this guy is somehow reading my mind. How the fuck does this guy know what I'm dreaming? And it sort of freaks him out. So he ends up coming out of that and exploring the nightlife in this town. And when he enters this one club, he lies about who he is and assumes somebody else's identity. They're all masked. He starts to gamble. He meets some people, and he starts getting caught up in the world of the guy whose identity he assumed finds him, doesn't let him know that's who he is right away. And they end up getting into trouble together because he almost gets mugged, or he gets mugged and beaten up outside of the club after he's won big on some gambling, and they end up robbing him. This guy sees the whole thing. They end up going and getting revenge. Our main character starts getting sucked into a life of crime. He's got a family. He's got a wife. He's got kids. He kind of starts going whole hog into this world. He finds this freedom with not being himself to do all of these things and kind of live this kind of life that he feels he's been missing out on. So it's a pretty interesting book. I feel like It touches on a bunch of different themes. You know, a couple that I think the beauty with some Brubaker work is its ability to resonate with a lot of people. There's a real addiction kind of theme in this as well, and as someone who's mildly struggled with some addictions in their life, I can kind of see that, because some of those addictions don't go away. You end up still kind of dealing with them to some degree, even as you get older. Even if you aren't kind of feeding those addictions, you still can feel them. So there's also there's obviously a section of you reach a certain age in your life and you've got that family and you've got a steady life. What could have been? I think there's always a bit of a drive in us to kind of, we're always having some form of battle with the kind of lizard brain elements. Some of us, that lizard brain speaks this much. Some of us, maybe it speaks volumes. But I do feel like there's some of those struggles that human beings have, you know, with some of those baser instincts, right? So I feel like it tackles all that stuff pretty well. This whole story unfolds really, really nicely. It was a pretty quick and easy read. I kind of sat and read it in just one go. It wasn't anything that I felt I had to step away from, or it was difficult to kind of read, where it was with some Reckless stuff. I found some of the Reckless stuff a little exhausting to read. It just wasn't interesting. This one had a really good pace and a really good flow that I enjoyed it. I really liked that one. So another one that maybe I look for my library. So it was Free Comic Book Day, 420. If you're still here, I saw that you posted a video of your Free Comic Book Day stuff. If anybody is not subscribed, go and subscribe and watch his videos. Always entertaining, picks up a wide range of books as well. Yeah, so go and check him out. I'm looking forward to seeing just the still that you used for the video itself. Had a couple of books that immediately caught my attention. There was some Mobius in there, obviously, that caught my attention. So I'm looking forward to, after the stream, going and watching that one. So for Free Comic Book Day, we only made it to one shop. My daughter had a birthday party she was going to, so we made it to 204 Comics and saw Ashley. He ordered, this year, he did something different with Free Comic Book Day. He ordered way more than he's ever ordered before. I think it's probably the same in every city. You go into shops and they have a limit on the amount of books that you can take for Free Comic Book Day. We went in and he said, I've ordered so many, there's no limit. If you want to take one of everything, be my guest. So I'm assuming that he's had a pretty good year, because I know it costs them money to get those books in. He's very appreciative of his customers, and I know that to be a fact, because he's just a goddamn good man. So it was great. My daughter picked, I think, 6 or 7 books. I think I picked 1, 2, 3, 4 from there. There was other ones, but over the years, I've really cut down on the amount of Free Comic Book Day stuff that I pick. And that's mainly because I know that I can't afford to buy all this stuff. So I sometimes worry that I'm going to pick up too many Free Comic Book Day stuff that is really going to catch my attention, and then I'll never dip into it. So yeah, thumbnails are for the homies. The Worlds of James Tynion IV. Obviously, like everybody else, I don't live under a rock, so I know about James Tynion and some of his big books, like Something is Killing the Children, and Wind, I think, is in here as well, too, where you just get a little bit of a sample. Memetic is another one that's in here. You get a little bit of a sample. Oh, so yeah, maybe this is from Wind. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's a couple of different stories in here, just focusing on James Tynion. Something is Killing the Children. There you go. Nothing like taking up 2 pages in a free comic book just for the title of a book. But I'm looking forward to this one, to dip into that. I think I called it Cannibal earlier in the stream with Rasa, but it looks like it's Gannibal, Gannibal. Is this in a Blaze? Yeah, it's in a Blaze manga. Another one that's streaming now on Hulu. It's also one that's printed in kind of the traditional manga style from back to front, what we would consider back to front, in glorious black and white. So this just caught my attention. I thought it looked pretty interesting. I'm always up for trying some new manga that I haven't seen before. From Vault Comics, something called Dying Inside. The cover caught my attention, and when I did a quick flip through, I was really taken with the art and the color. I really liked the looks of this. Again, sort of in that manga type of world, even though it's not strictly manga. Caught my attention. There's a warning which I didn't see on the front. The warning is that it includes discussion of suicide and depictions of self-harm. So we'll see. My daughter was curious about reading this as well too, but because of that warning, I'm not sure. I'm going to have a read through it first and see how intense it is. One that I did get for both of us to read, we read Lucky Luke together. We finished that volume, The Man Who Shot Lucky Luke. We finished that. She actually really enjoyed it. It was super fun to read out loud with her, so much so that I want to find some more Lucky Luke. When we were talking about it, I told her about Asterix and Obelix. That was also something I read when I was a kid. So there was a free comic book day, Asterix. No brainer, picked it up. We'll read this one together as well too. I think everybody's familiar with these characters, but there's a look on the inside if you're not. So that was the shop we made it to yesterday. Today, I took a trip down to Galaxy Comics and picked up 2 more books. This one was from a Halloween comic extravaganza from previous year, a couple of years ago, 2021 possibly. It was a Daredevil book. Grabbed it. It was free. And then this is the other one I was looking for this free comic book day, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book. Curious to see what this one was about. So I'm glad I didn't see one at 204. Doesn't mean it wasn't there. I just may have missed it. It was still pretty packed when we went in there, so I may have missed it there, but that kind of rounds off what I got. What did I do there? Let's do this. I didn't go out to Free Comic Book Day this year because I had to work. Sadly, I haven't even read one of the many books I picked up last year. Yeah, I know, I suck. I mean, and that's kind of what happens. The stuff that I was picking up when back in the day we were picking up more, I was in the same boat. I just wasn't reading them. There was this, I should just grab it because it's free. I should just grab it. And then we'd end up visiting a few shops. And next thing you know, you've got a stack of like 12 books. And I just didn't read them all because when I sat with them over the next kind of week, the interest in the actual book itself was just not there. I think I picked it up just because. And I feel like there's 1 or 2 here that are like that, but I'm really going to try to read all of these so we can talk about them. Ashley had a sale going on at 204 as well. And I picked up just 2 books. He had a 25% off sale. So I picked up an issue of Marvel Tales. Sorry, this is issue number 6 of Marvel Tales. I haven't read this one yet. I've only got a couple of issues of Marvel Tales. I love these old reprints, that collector's item classics. I've got the whole run of that one. The thing I love about those is you're still getting, because these things were reprinted just a few years after the original books came out. They are printed on the same paper. They're yellowed just like those books would be. They have that same old comic book smell. It's fine that you can get these reprints. One of the things that always drives me a little nuts is I don't like them on this crisp white paper. I don't like the reprints oftentimes updated and refreshed and made to look. I like, part of why I love these old comics is because of the yellow paper, is because of the faded colors, is because of that old comic book smell. It's about that entire thing for me. It's not, I just want to see the most pristine version of the art. Obviously, that's nice to do if there's stories that I really like. I love Ditko's Doctor Strange. Of course, I'd love to see some more crisper versions of that as well. But for the most part, these win for me. And I'm always amazed that all of these kind of early reprint books don't go for way more money than they're always priced very reasonably. Like this one was priced at $8. So I got it for $6 with that discount. Probably a bit less because I've got a little bit of a discount there because I have a pull list there. I haven't read this one yet, but I'm very excited to read this one. And then I ended up filling in a gap in my Strange Tales collection, which I'm very, 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 very slowly filling up. I've got a long ways to go. I'm just trying to collect all of the Doctor Strange Tales stuff. I've got a long ways to go. I don't think I'll ever actually complete them, but I figured I'd splurge and pick myself up one of these. This one I did read, and honestly, I love Doctor Strange. Love him. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the Human Torch and the Thing story in this one with the Mad Thinker. It was really just a fun little story. Not much to it, but I just really got into, again, I think it's just the old books themselves. I don't read as much superhero stuff these days. I haven't even really dipped into some of my older books, it feels like, in a while. So it was really nice to revisit this era of comics and read these stories and see panels that look like this that are just a little bit off, but still look pretty incredible. Yeah, it was a fun little story. The Doctor Strange story was great as well too. It's Dormammu and Baron Mordo that are out to get him. Baron Mordo has a bunch of minions. We get a bunch of out-of-body experiences. We get some beautiful Ditko art, including panels like this one here. Where is it? Pardon me. Including panels like this. I love this kind of stuff. His shapes and lines, especially in the Doctor Strange stuff, is always exceptional. Doctor Strange pulls a fast one on him as he steps out of his body to fight them on the astral plane within the plane and talks about how nobody there can witness their battle. So fucking good. And pulls a fast one where he now disguises himself as one of the minions, waving them off the plane, saying, no, he's not even here. Let's go search somewhere else. So a nice little story, a great issue. Most of these Strange Tales, well, all of the Doctor Strange stuff in these Strange Tales are amazing. But it was nice to have one where, surprisingly, I enjoyed that first story more than I thought I would. So scratch another one off the list for Strange Tales. Let's see. By the way, were you looking for Trad Moore Doctor Strange? Mighty has a set, and all used comics, trade paperbacks, back issues, and sets are 50% off. Sale continues till Saturday. Oh, I have the issues. I've got the whole thing, and I've got the Treasury edition of it. Thank you for that, though. I'm glad to hear that you went to Mighty Comics. How was it? I get frustrated with Mighty Comics going in there. I hope he doesn't watch this stuff. I don't mean it to disparage him. I'm not here to like put people down. I just find his shop really frustrating to go through. I can never look through stuff. I'm always worried that I'm going to knock something over. The few times that I have seen him recently, he doesn't seem like he even wants people in the store. We had a very, very mild confrontation about fucking Archie comics, which was ridiculous to me. After making some offhanded comment, he got pretty pissed off about it. So I always feel like it's just not a welcoming place. I'm sure he's got amazing stuff there, but honestly, when I've got to move piles of books and boxes and there's things teetering around you, I just don't feel comfortable digging in a place like that because I'm worried I'm going to knock over a stack. I'm going to ruin something. So is it still to that level, or has he started to clean it up in there? Because if it's still at that level, I ain't stepping foot in that place. Went to my LCS for a free comic book day. Didn't pick up any of the free books, but I picked up a short box full of $1 books. Amazing. I went to Hello Jeff. I went to Galaxy Comics on free comic book day and bought volume 1 of Hellboy and volume 1 of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in their bargain bin room for $20. Jeez, man. Wow, that's amazing. When are they ever going to get the other building opened again upstairs for those back issues? That's my question for Jeremy every time I see him. When the hell is that going to open, man? I want to go back up there, even though it wasn't the cheapest of places to dig in. 100% agree about the reprints. That's one of the main reasons I still haven't read all of the Kirby Fourth World stuff, because I've just heard so much about the reprint coloring being so bad. Yeah, and the coloring is a whole other conversation. The reprint coloring drives me nuts sometimes when it was perfectly fine in the originals, unless, as I've said in the past, unless the artist themselves is directly involved in it and they're the ones requesting a reprint. I'm so against the recoloring. I'm so against recoloring it that I just can't. I can't deal with it. Saw upstairs Red River Books had some Strange Tales, pretty cheap but not that high grade. Yeah, Red River is great. I've sung their praises many times. I don't need high grade of Strange Tales, but the times I've seen Strange Tales there upstairs, they've just been too low grade where they're falling apart. I don't want books that are falling apart. Even if it is a series I really want to read, I need them a little bit higher grade than that. He got much more organized, at least post-it notes on long boxes too. I just made fun of certain titles, etc., without worry, and move long boxes around like I own the joint. Yeah. But to be honest, much more organized. Well, that's good to hear. And I mean, I don't have an issue with moving stuff around. It's just that in that shop, you have to move so much stuff around that it's like, it just becomes, am I fucking working here or am I buying comics? And I don't have the interest. So I just end up giving up. Backroom 1 wall, all used trade paperbacks, half off USD. That's amazing. Agree about upstairs at Galaxy. Need that back. Yeah. I also went to Mighty Comics for the first time. Pretty cramped. Great sale, though. Yeah, I saw him posted on social media, so maybe I will go and check it out next weekend. It's nice having some Winnipeggers in the chat. Fuck. Thanks for being here, fellas. I also... and if I ever see you in person, if we're ever out there, because I don't see you and you see me, please introduce yourself. Please come and say hello. I'm not the best with names, so I may look at you funny for a second, but introduce yourselves if we do see each other out there, because you guys have an advantage. You know this beautiful face. So come and say hello if we see each other out in a shop. Godzilla, The War for Humanity, the final issue came out. This was the 5-issue miniseries. Andrew McLean and Jake Smith and Valentina Pinto. Andrew McLean cover on this one. Beautiful cover. I love this one. This was a fun series all around. I was really enjoying it. I love the art and the coloring. I just really adore it. The story itself was good enough, let's just say. And this ending was good enough. There's nothing mind-blowing. I also love, like, for some reason, I really got into the details on these teeth. The line work on those teeth. It almost looked like pencils, pencil crayons happening there. So everything went well. The giant monster that was going to ruin humanity was destroyed. Godzilla stomped off back to Monster Island. The mother and daughter that were kind of having troubles in their relationship bonded again. They had a chance to have a little bit of a campfire and talk it out. It was a really fun little series. I don't always pick up every Godzilla series because there's a few of them out there where the art is just too plain and doesn't catch my interest. But I love this art style, and it's been this good right from the beginning. It's been really consistent with fun panels, amazing looking monsters, great little fights. Like, look at this shit. That's amazing stuff there. So I wouldn't hesitate if you see this cheap, or if you're adventurous and want to get the collected, like the trade paperback, pick it up and give it a shot. The other thing that caught my interest in this one, oh, here's a look at the other covers. One of the very few books that only has 3 covers. Can you believe it? The main cover, the Andrew MacLean, and then a retailer incentive cover that looks pretty sick, actually. And the other thing that caught my interest, which I'll be keeping an eye out for, Godzilla 70th Anniversary, a gigantic anthology of tales from 1954 until now. Really looking forward to flipping through this one on the shelf. I think it comes out this month. Yeah, coming in May. So I'm not sure when, but sooner than later. I really want to look through this, and I'm got my fingers crossed that there's going to be some great art. Maybe we'll get another James Stokoe Godzilla story in here if we're lucky, because his stuff has been pretty great. So I'm looking forward to flipping through that. So not much else to say about that one. Pretty consistent through the whole thing. Pretty fun. If you have kids and you read comics with your kids, this is easily one that you could read with them or pass on to them to read as well. Nothing really terrifying in it by any stretch. Just kind of really good fun. That's it there. I also found, when I went to Galaxy, I also found they had 1 copy left of Dawn Runner issue number 1. So I'm really glad I got that. I enjoyed issue 2. So this will give me a chance to kind of go back and read that one. And then who can pass up Mike Allred Batman? I know issue 2 is out, but again, they only had 1 or maybe they had a little more of issue number 1 still at Galaxy. Yeah, there might have been a few covers of it now that I'm thinking about it. Batman is really hit and miss for me, but I do love Mike Allred, so I wanted to give this one a shot. And if it's any good, I will keep up with it. So, but it feels like it's one of those books that even if the story isn't great, the art is going to be amazing. The Godzilla art looks fun. It's super fun. Good night, everyone. 5 a.m. comes quick. Thanks very much for hanging out. Finally, on tonight's agenda, one of the other shops that I went to was Fantasy Club Books, which is on Corridon Avenue, in the back of a shop called something Riley Gray, I think is what the shop is called. His name is Austin. I finally met the owner. I've been there a number of times, but he's never there because he has another job. He only ends up working 3 days a week. I think it was Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, or was it Thursdays, Saturday, Sunday? I don't remember. But I went in to see him because I wanted to just kind of peek around. Not that I thought that he would have any free comic book day stuff, which he didn't. He had a little bit of a sale going on, the very, very few back issues that he has. It was so great to finally meet him face to face. We had a really, really great chat for like, I don't know, half an hour at least. At one point, he kind of apologized, like, I'm sorry, it's just I have so much to talk about because it's rare that people come in and actually know about these books that I can actually talk to them about. He carries a lot of independent and small press stuff, which, as you know, people that have been watching this channel for any length of time, you know that I love that stuff. So I picked up a few books from him. The main reason that I went was to pick up Jasper Krentz Magnet Head number 2. I loved Magnet Head number 1. We talked about it on the show. I am now a huge Jasper Krentz fan. This is a fantastic issue. It kind of picks up from where the first book left off. The whole kind of the basic premise of this book is Jasper experienced some head trauma at some point. For a whole lot of my childhood, I had a hard time being with myself. My mind would start to go like a car with no brakes. My brain never stopped running. The problem was he never put down his knife. He ran and ran until he tripped with the knife blade facing up, stabbing me in the stomach. It has this kind of stream of consciousness mixed with narration, mixed with kind of autobio. But he got a concussion, and that really had an effect on his personality. And he really became the reason it's called Magnet Head is because it seemed like no matter where he was, things were drawn to his head like a magnet. And he was really worried about any sort of extra trauma because he was worried about what that would do to his brain, period. So he started isolating himself and not engaging with the outside world, because when he did, someone would give him a noogie, or someone would accidentally bump him in the head, or in this one, somebody throws a paper airplane and it hits him in the head and he ends up freaking out. And he said what he found was that he started getting more and more angry and aggressive towards people, and started to have a really hard time just existing out in the world. He's based out of New York. Last week, AFPC, who sometimes joins us, was telling us that this was a student of his, because he's an art teacher there, I think, whatever that college was called. I can't remember what it was called. So he talks about all that stuff and just talks about relationships that he has with people. In this issue, he finally comes to terms with getting on some medication to help with his depression, and he's starting to kind of deal with that. But his work is so kind of energetic and just wild. I forgot to pull it off the shelf, but there's a Guido Crepax book called that he does the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And near the end of one of the chapters, as Dr. Jekyll is turning into Mr. Hyde, Crepax does this thing with exactly this, where it's these different eyes moving across the page, one central figure, and you can see the eyes changing as it moves across the panel. So Krentz uses a similar kind of style with a much different effect. I found with some of these pages, you're looking at the eyes and you're following the eyes. There's this kind of dizziness that ends up happening where you start to kind of feel a little woozy. You can feel things kind of spinning on the page. One of them, and all of these pages, just it's page after page, dance with people, again kind of illustrating how he was feeling when he was going out and trying to interact with people. The one that really caught my attention, though, was this one here, this page here. That head spinning around actually felt like it was moving on the page when I was flipping through this book. Amazing stuff. This guy has something going on that I just don't think I've really seen before. His mix of styles, he cuts out some art, as you can see here, to slap onto the page. Sometimes you have some drawings that are a little more refined. Sometimes you get some drawings that are very, very cartoony. Like when he starts to think about taking this medication, we get this different look on the page using like what looks like spray paint even. So this is someone who's just full on getting ideas out on the page to an amazing effect. I love this book a lot. So I'm a big fan. One of the stereotypes that we end up seeing a lot of time in underground comics and drug use specifically is someone takes some drugs and it changes their perspective and they start to go through this transition. He does that here with him taking this pills, this antidepressants, and we get these incredible 2 pages where this one, however, doesn't have that same psychedelic feel. This one has a bit of a different feel to it, where this doesn't look like fun. It doesn't look like something that he's embracing and kind of enjoying. You can see kind of the pain as he's dealing with what this medication does to him. And yeah, after living with somebody that was on medication for depression and going through a phase that she was taking different pills and they were trying to deal with the doses and all of those kind of things, it really is a fucking roller coaster, and not in a fun way. So I thought these 2 pages illustrated that really, really well. So Krentz is a guy to watch out for, man. He's really, really interesting young artist. Yeah, really fucking good. even stuff like this, like just wild stuff. So that's Magnet Head number 2. It's kind of magazine size. It's pretty beefy as well too. I think Domino Books has this. I think Partners and Sons has this online. But like I was saying, if you're the two of you that are here in town, if this does look interesting, you can get it from Fantasy Club Books. Fantasy Club Books also has an Instagram page. Why don't I pull that one up and we can check it out, and I'll show you. Where's my search? Fantasy Club Books. Let's do a share page. Here we go. So one of the other things, Jasper Jubenville that does Dynamite Diva. I pre-ordered the newest Dynamite Diva. We were talking about it. I was talking about it with Austin, and he was saying that he missed the pre-order, but Jasper is someone that he's talking to see if he can come through town. Jasper is based out of Vancouver. He is apparently potentially doing like a mini sort of book tour and making his way to Toronto. So Austin is kind of trying to kind of build a relationship to have him, see if he can convince him to stop in here in Winnipeg. And Austin was saying that he was approaching some other artists. He wants to try to get more of these artists to come through town, which I fully support. I should really talk to him and maybe have him on the show, maybe do a talk with Austin, and he can talk to us about how he started this. He's a super, super nice guy. He loves comics to a degree that is so great to see. He loves these kind of weirdo comics that I love. It was equally exciting for me to be able to talk to somebody in person about these books who was as thrilled and knew a lot of the books that I knew, but also could turn me on to some names that I didn't know. I did talk to him about Canon. He carries Bubbles fanzine and Strangers fanzine. I talked to him about Canon and got him in touch with Colin Blanchette. So I'm hoping that there's a relationship there that can be built. I would love to see more copies of Canon available here in town. But here's his page, 701 Corridon Avenue. The store is called Riley Gray, so you won't see Fantasy Club Books on the outside. You go in and up the stairway, and he's at the back on that upper floor there. Very, very small spot. Of course, when you're looking at these kind of comics, we're not talking like $3.99 books. Some of these books can get pretty expensive. But he seems to have worked a relationship out with some. Yeah, here we go. Look at this post right here. Dan's Secret is the next one I want to go for. So these are the two that we've got here. He carries Caroline Cash. This series Mole is pretty good from the one issue that I've read. Dan's Secret will be the next one that I get. He carries some local artists as well too. He's got a very, very small section that has some local cartoonists. He also does have some back issues of like Marvel, DC stuff, but that's not the focus of his store, so there isn't very much there at all. But for those of you who are in town, go and check him out. Really, really nice little spot. Yeah, here's what the back corner kind of looks like. So he's just got this back corner there, and I think there's a nail salon potentially through that. So here's kind of his back issue bins here. And then this is the main shelf of the indie comics. There's a couple of books here on the shelf as well too. And then up on that shelf there. So go and check him out. Yeah. So Riley Gray is the name of the store at 701 Corridon. You can find him online too. fantasyclubbooks.bigcartel.com. Obviously, if you're living in the United States, ordering from Winnipeg doesn't make any sense. You have way better access. But for those of you in Canada, he set up a PO box in Pembina, I think, is what he was saying, so he can get stuff shipped there, and then he just does the trips down like some of the other people here in Winnipeg do, gets stuff shipped to that, and then just goes and picks them up. Didn't know that place was there. Sounds cool. Yeah, it's really amazing, especially if you like that kind of stuff. That Magnet Head covers just demands your attention. Great title and story behind it. Absolutely wild. Energetic indeed. Very cool. Yeah. So that was one of the books. One of the other books I got was a, I've talked about him before. Matt Seneca. This is called Phase Eternal. Matt Seneca did a book called Pure Evil that I spoke about on a stream, and I love that book. Matt Seneca, I think, has done a lot of comics writing and not a ton of comics work. So this one was in the discount bin because it had a little bit of damage on the front, so it was at $5. That didn't bother me too much, so I picked it up because I just wanted to read more Matt Seneca. It's beautifully put together, highly like glossy and very amazing quality for even just the cover alone, let alone the internal pages. It's amazing artwork. Matt Seneca is a hell of an artist. This one is much bolder with color and things than Pure Evil is. The story on this one isn't as strong as Pure Evil. If I had to kind of recommend one over the other, it would be Pure Evil over this one, which I think, again, Fantasy Club Books might still have a copy of that as well, too. This is great, but the other one I think is a stronger work than this one. But as you can see, looking through this, it's just amazingly done. Really, really bold coloring, beautiful design. That sort of almost Paul Pope-ish type of look to the figures, to the characters themselves. But really good stuff overall. Nice use of color, nice use of panels. So yeah, there you go. That's it's Matt Seneca. And last but certainly not least, my favorite read of the week. I mean, it's a got Caroline Cash is awesome, man. I've got a few of the things that she's done. I have an extra copy of one of them as well too there, Jeff. So if you go in it and it's not there, just let me know, because I do have an extra copy of that issue. I'm pretty sure that I do. So let me know. In the world of kind of anthologies, the classic, there was some good and there was some bad. Doesn't apply to this one. This is probably one of the strongest anthologies I've read in a long time. This is jam-packed with quality fucking comics. This is a New York-based anthology, so all of the artists here are New York. We have Nate Garcia doing the cover and an interview inside, as well as a strip. This is what I say. Did I say 86? Yeah, 86 pages printed on newsprint. And it is so goddamn good. I loved reading this. It took me a little while to read it, but that was only because I just read it so slowly and was really enjoying every little section, putting it down, coming back to it. I've flipped through this thing numerous times. There's other issues of this out there. I think that the first 3 are probably impossible to find. I don't know if they've been reprinted or not, but if you can get yourself a copy of this one, I would highly recommend it. Again, Fantasy Club Books has extras of these as well, so I'll keep hawking them. And there's a bunch of names that I know, and there's a bunch of names that I have no idea about. So right off the bat, we get Juliette Collette, who I've spoken about before. She does that. I think is it called just Ha Ha Ha, possibly? There's a few issues of that. I picked some up from Domino Comics, from Domino Books. So she starts off. Who else do we have? Floyd Tangeman is in here, of course. Mara Bailey, Ashton Carless, Jasper Krentz is in here as well. Magnet Head himself. Like I said, Nate Garcia. Dan Welch was another standout for me. And a bunch of other names that I'm just not familiar with. It runs the gamut from stuff that's a little more traditional, I would say, in terms of comics. And then it goes to, we get a strip here, for example, that's just 2 giant panels. That's very abstract. We get stuff that's extremely abstract. For example, I won't show him again. That's Jasper Krentz again. I mean, Tangemin has almost like a Mark Bell kind of vibe going on, but his stuff is a little more in the kind of the traditional comics kind of realm with panels and somewhat of a story. We get stuff that looks like this. We get a color section as well too. So we're just, every single story is presenting something different, and I love it. Here's another kind of color section here as well. One of the standouts for me though had to have been a character that's called the Pencil Necked Geek, and he's very much like a Zippy the Pinhead. He's very much like those classic 90s underground or independent comics characters that I could see having a long life. This strip I've read numerous times, and every time I read it, I laugh out loud. It's fucking hilarious. This is DW, Dan Welch is his name, Welch. So it's the strip is called Words of Wisdom from the Pencil Necked Geek. And it's just various, he talks about fashion, lust, film, the environment, representation, and war. And as he's going through, I love that his facial expression just keeps changing, where he looks more kind of distraught and upset the more he talks about. The one that had me going was Words of Wisdom on representation. I was at my high school friend's bachelor party the other day, and I took the opportunity to ask him how many POC people he had invited to his wedding, and he couldn't give me a number. I told him I was not going to be able to make it to the ceremony. My +1 is still going though. I love that. So it's really, it has his feet firmly, all of this stuff kind of has their feet firmly in kind of the underground comic scene, whether it's content or whether it's stylistically. Such a strong anthology, man. Like, yeah, this will be probably one of the top reads of the year. It's right up there right now for me. I can see myself revisiting this numerous times and wishing that I could get my hands on some of the earlier issues. So I may have to do a little bit of a dig, even if it's just issue number 4. I would love to see some more of this. The Nate Garcia interview is pretty great as well, too. Not super long, but one of the things he ends up talking about is he's starting to kind of scan his pencils. He's trying to maybe put together a book of his pencils. Like a lot of artists, he says that he loves the energy in his pencils that he just can't capture with the inks. So he gives us a sample here, or they include a sample. And again, because it's on newsprint, it even looks just better, you know. So we get his kind of preliminary pencils, which are pretty detailed, or end up being pretty detailed. And then we get the final page itself here just for a compare and contrast, which I thought was really great. I love that they made the decision to print this on newspaper. I think that really adds to the overall experience with reading this. So this is great. There was also a Pigpen extra in the back of this one too. I guess one of the things that the Clamp Anthology has done since number 1 is including some extra bits with each of the books themselves. This is the thing that came with this particular issue. So like I said, online, I think Clamp has its own website, but like I said, I'm pretty sure you can get it at Domino Comics, and you can get it at Partners and Sons, and probably like the Floating Worlds of the World, and some of those kind of indie comic shops. Highly recommended. 6 sounds great, like indie underground anthologies of old. Yeah, wasn't that Classy Freddie Blassie or something? Song. Oh, which song? So anyway, that's all that I read. Thanks very much for coming to hang out. I appreciate seeing you guys every week. Thanks for coming and listening to my ramblings and rantings, and read a ton of books. Be fucking decent people. Don't fall into any traps. try to pay attention to the world around you, try to look at things objectively, and yeah, really. Oh, Pencil Neck Geek. Yeah, that was something that was from wrestling. You're absolutely right. Yes. Try to pay attention to things and try to see through people's bullshit and not fall for it. Right on, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Later.